So, a few weeks ago, we were gathered around the table having dinner together as a family, and things were going smoothly until our 8-year-old daughter, Selah, started yelling at me. And she started screaming, "Poppy, your hand! Poppy, your hand!" And I'm looking down at both my hands, wondering what in the heck is wrong with one of my hands, if there was a spider crawling on me. And at that time, she kind of leaps over the table and she starts hitting on my tattoo. You remember this? I should let you tell the story, huh? She starts hitting on my tattoo and she says, "But Poppy, it says 3 blessings." She picked this tattoo out, by the way. And I thought, oh, shoot. Because, see, earlier that afternoon, Tammy, my wife, and I let Selah know that we were having a surprise. A new little baby Canaday was coming into the family unexpectedly come end of February. And so her big question was, how are we going to get 3 blessings? Because there's only 3 of us. How are we going to get it to say 4? No worries, I'm working with my artist. I think we're going to do a little +1. And see, it was a few days before that, Tammy, my wife, calls me. And I was here in the office, and it was a Wednesday afternoon, and she says, "Ryan, you need to come home." And I thought I knew exactly what it was about, because the night before, we had the talk. Some of y'all have had the talk, and it goes like this. "Honey, I need you to start helping out around the house a little bit more than what you're currently doing." Some of y'all get that talk often, I know it. "Honey, I need you to at least be able to transfer the dishes from the sink to the dishwasher." So when she said I needed to come home, we needed to talk, I said, "Tam, I know I left the dishes out again last night. I'm so sorry. Don't do any of the dishes. Don't even do your own dishes. I'm going to do them all. As soon as I get home later this evening, I'm going to do all of them." She got a bit more serious. She said, No, you need to come home now." And I said, "Who died?" She said, No. It's the opposite." So I get on my scooter and I go home. And we go up to our office area and we're sitting on the couch and we were shedding tears together. And I have to admit to y'all, these were not tears of joy. These were tears of like totally freaking out. We didn't plan for this. We didn't expect this. How did this happen? I mean, we know how it happened, but how did this happen? We didn't plan for it. This wasn't in our planning for the future. And so the only thing I could think to do was to call Mike Holloman. Is Mike Holloman here? No, he's not here right now. Mike and Linda Holloman, I knew they had 4 kids. So I called my boy Mike. I said, "Mike, man, I am totally freaking out here. Tammy's pregnant. And we didn't plan for this. This is not expected." And I had 100 questions for him. And I can't tell you, I can't recall exactly what Mike said in that short 5-minute conversation, but what he said was, "Dude, you got this. Go in peace." "Yeah, but Mike, man, I'm not sure you understand, dude. My life all of a sudden got really complicated, going from 3 to 4. We didn't plan this. How'd this happen? I mean, we know how it happened, but how did it happen?" "Dude, you got this. Go in peace." And see, here's what I know about life. When life gets complicated, even when those complications can be good, when life gets complicated, we want answers. But what we need is a blessing. One of my favorite stories that comes from the Old Testament book of 2 Kings. And in 2 Kings chapter 5, we get this story of a man named Naaman and a prophet named Elisha. And see, the text tells us in 2 Kings chapter 5 that Naaman is this very powerful commander of the army for the king of Aram. And the text tells us that Naaman was a great man in the sight of his master because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. But the text tells us this powerful man also had a problem. He had a skin disease. Some translations say leprosy. And if you had a skin disease, an infectious skin disease back in the day, it meant you were ostracized, you were an outcast. So here we have the story setting us up. There's this really powerful man, the commander of the army of Aram, and yet he has a skin disease. And so he gets word from this young Jewish slave girl. Here's the story behind the slave girl. Some of his men, the raiders, went into Israel, Aram in battle, not friends, enemies. They went into Israel and got some captives. One of them was this young Jewish slave girl who is now serving Naaman's wife. And she says, oh, I know how he can get cured. All he has to do is go into my homeland of Israel and talk to the prophet. Naaman says, seriously? Yeah. So Naaman goes to his boss, the king of Aram. He says, boss, I need a few days off because apparently if I go into Israel, I can get healing of this skin disease. And his boss says, perfect. You're a good man. Anything I can do to help, you've got it. He says, in fact, why don't I write you a letter? Because you got to go to the king of Israel first before you could see the prophet. So I'll give you this letter, and when you get into Israel, give it to the king. Naaman sets off to Israel. This is a very powerful man. He's prepared to pay. He sets off with all his men. He's got massive amounts of gold and silver and horses and chariots, and the text says 10 sets of clothes. And he stands before the king. And he hands him this letter. And the king of Israel reads this letter. He finishes the letter. He throws it down on the ground. And the story tells us that he rips his clothes off, which is in that time and in that day a sign of mourning. It's a sign of tragedy. The king of Israel thinks Naaman is trying to draw him back into a battle. He thinks he's being manipulated. Now, stay with me. In this same story, we're told there's a great man of God living in Israel, a prophet named Elisha. Elisha hears how his king is responding. And Elisha says, dude, you have got to get your act together. We are going to welcome this man. Have you forgotten who we are? Have you forgotten who we're called to be? We are going to welcome this man. The exact phrase is, let this man come to me. So the king releases Naaman to go to the household of Elisha. Here's where the story picks up, verse 9. Stay with me. It's kind of a lengthy paragraph, but don't miss the details. Verse 9 through 18. Naaman arrived with his horses and chariots. He stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent out a messenger who said, go and wash 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored and become clean. But Naaman went away in anger. He said, I thought for sure that he'd come out, stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the bad spot, and cure the skin disease. Aren't the rivers in Damascus, the Abana and the Pharpar, better than all Israel's waters? In other words, couldn't I have done this at home? Couldn't I wash in them and get clean? So he turned away and proceeded to leave in anger. Naaman's servants came up to him and spoke to him, our father, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? All he said to you was, wash and become clean. So Naaman went down and bathed in the Jordan 7 times, just as the man of God had said. His skin was restored like that of a young boy, and he became clean. He returned to the man of God with all his attendants. He came and stood before Elisha, saying, now I know for certain that there's no God anywhere on earth except in Israel. Please accept a gift from your servant. But Elijah said, I swear by the life of the Lord I serve that I won't accept anything. Naaman urged Elisha to accept something, but he still refused. Now check this out. Then Naaman said, if not, then let me, your servant, have 2 mule loads of earth. Your servant will never again offer entirely burned offerings and sacrifices to any other gods except the Lord. Let's pause there for just a moment. Something you should know. In that time and in that day, you had what's called localized deities, which means each land, each region had their own god that they would bow down to and worship. Why is Naaman asking for 2 mule loads of earth? Fine, you won't accept a gift, fine, but at least give me 2 mule loads of earth out of the deal. Now, last I checked, none of y'all walked into Murdoch's and said, can I please have 2 mule loads of earth? No. The 21st century American way of saying this is, can I please get some dirt? Why would Naaman want dirt from Israel to take back to his homeland in Aram? Because Naaman wants to build something. Can you think of any other scenarios in the Old Testament where a character had a profound experience with God and then went to build something? What did they build? Altars. Naaman wants to go back home and build an altar to express his gratitude. The storyteller wants us to know that something powerful and transformative has happened in the life of Naaman. Remember how the story begins, a very powerful army general. Now he calls himself a servant. He sees himself differently. He sees the world differently. What's he restored to? That of a young boy, from the powerful to the powerless. Here's where the story gets really good. 2 more verses. Stay with me. Verse 18. But, and this is Naaman talking to Elijah, but may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master comes into Ramon's temple to bow down there and is leaning on my arm, I must also bow down in Ramon's temple. When I bow down in Ramon's temple, may the Lord forgive your servant for doing that. Oh, and that's good, isn't it? That's good. Because Naaman has just had this powerful, incredible experience with the living God, so much so to where he says, there are no other gods. There are no other gods. And keep in mind, he's still working out of these old categories of localized deities. There are no other gods, only the God of Israel, only the Lord. But, my man, Elisha, my life is about to get really complicated. Because see, here's the problem, Elisha. When I go home tonight, well, that means tomorrow morning I got to get up and go to work. And when I go to work and I join my king, the king of Aram, my boss, I've got to go into Ramon's temple like we do every other day. And see, Elisha, when he's holding on to my arm and we're in the temple of Ramon and he starts to bow down, well, I have to bow down with him. I mean, my life depends on it. Literally, my head depends on this. And see, Elisha, will this God whom I just encountered, will this God forgive me? Oh, but it's more than just about forgiveness, isn't it? Elisha, will this God go with me when I leave this place? How did Elisha respond? I mean, out of everything he could have said, come on, Naaman, choose this day whom you will serve. What's it going to be? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Come on, Naaman, stand for something or fall for everything. What's it going to be? No. Elisha doesn't play the game of guilt and shame. He says 3 simple words, and it's the most beautiful blessing in Scripture. Elisha said to him, go in peace. Now, when a prophet said go in peace, keep in mind it comes from that root word, that ancient Hebrew word shalom, which, as we saw earlier, it means way more than just the absence of conflict or war. It means healing and wholeness and well-being. I mean, when Elisha said go in peace, he says God is with you. The peace and blessing of the divine goes with you and rests upon you. When Elisha said, go in peace, Elisha is saying to Naaman, God goes with you. God's favor literally rests upon you. Whew. I mean, can you imagine Naaman's response? Yeah, but Elijah, when I get in there, what should I do? I don't even believe in this God anymore. I believe in the one true God, but what should I do once I get in? Should I bow, or should I say something to my boss? Should I tell him anything? I know you want answers. Go in peace. Yeah, but Elijah, go in peace. You see, so many of us, we were taught that when it comes to God and spirituality and religion, that it's just about a bunch of rules. And if we can just keep the rules, if we could just take a stand for the right thing, then everything will be fine. And my brothers and sisters, what about when things aren't fine? What about when the answers aren't so clear? Because some situations are just morally ambiguous. And the truth is, some of y'all have really complicated lives. You say, yeah, but Pastor Ryan, it's all good when I'm here in worship on a Sunday morning, and then I hang out with the family on Sunday afternoon, but man, you don't get it. I've got to get up and go to work tomorrow morning. And see, sometimes in my job, it puts me in these really ethically challenging situations, and I don't always know what's right. I don't always know how to handle it. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, and go in peace. Some of you have some messy relationships in your life. Like that relationship that creates in you all kinds of pain and heartache, and you don't know where to put that relationship. You don't have a category for it. You don't know if you're doing it right. You don't know if you should cut it off and go a new direction, or if you should try to make amends, and you don't know if making amends would actually be more harmful, and you ask yourself, like, man, am I doing the right thing? Go in peace. Some of you, when it comes to your lives and your career and your heart, you live in the tension of ambition and contentment. When to pick something up, when to let something go, when to go after that thing, and when to stay present. Man, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Go in peace. Oh, and how about parenting? Nothing can put us in ambiguous situations more than parenting, huh? Because you might have that child who is just so lovable and cuddly, but that child can also push your buttons, and they know how to push the buttons because you installed them. And see, maybe that child grows and gets older, and that child is now late teenage years, and that child is causing a ruckus in the household. And your great dilemma is, do I let them stay and live here, or do I kick them out? You see, somewhere along the way, so many of us were taught that God is found in the elimination of the tension, that God is all about giving us clear answers. And those answers, it's like a yes or no. It's a black or white. It's a this way or that way. But my friends, what about when the answers aren't so clear? And it's not that they're not clear because you don't have faith. It's precisely the opposite. The answers aren't clear because you do have faith. You've experienced the living God. Your life is different. You see, when Elisha said, go in peace, it was Elisha saying, God goes with you. In the tension, in the mess, in the ambiguity, in the sweat, the struggle, the second guessing, God goes with you. So you've got some tension rumbling around in here. You've got some questions. Good. Good. Because that tension, it might just let you know that you're still in the game. It might let you know that you are still critically thinking through the issues, the political issues, the social issues, the religious issues, the theological issues. That tension in here that makes you wonder if you're doing it right, it might just let you know that your faith is still alive and kicking. Keep on going. And I get it. When life gets complicated, even if the complications are good. We want answers. But what we need is a blessing. Go in peace. Go in peace. Or like the lyrics of the song we're going to hear in just a moment by Brett Dennen. Blessed is this life. I'm going to celebrate being alive. Blessed is this life.